Oligopoly is a significantly different industry structure when compared to monopolistic competition. This lecture will describe the characteristics of oligopoly, explain some of the models of oligopoly pricing and output. We'll specifically take a look at the price leader model, and we'll discuss the efficiency of oligopoly from society's standpoint and whether it is efficient. Oligopoly is a structure where the market is dominated by a few large producers of either homogeneous or differentiated products. There are only a few producers fighting for a majority share of the particular market segment. Terms like the Big Four or Big Six are used by market analysts to describe the industry. The firms have much more control over their prices, but must always be aware of potential competitive reactions. Each firm can set its own price, just like the monopolist. It can set output at levels that maximizes profit. But the members of the oligopolistic industry are much more concerned with how their competitors will react to any competitive challenge or any competitive change. So pricing and product decisions are much more strategic, much more visible. For example, when Burger King changes their kids' menu pricing or launches a new sandwich, they always try to understand what the competitive reaction of McDonald's might be. Mutual interdependence, where the firm's behavior, but also the behavior of close competitors, is the decision framework in these types of markets. Global competition also plays a role in defining what competitive reactions could be, a substantially different environment that existed 2 decades ago. Kentucky Fried Chicken is no longer an American company, for example. The capital and human resource requirements are large in an oligopolistic industry. Thus, there are substantial barriers to entry. New firms may not have the capital, research and development, and human resources to enter and get a return and to satisfy customers. The requirements are not just at the point of entry. Their expenditures are significant over the longer term. However, there are exceptions. Tesla Motors, an automotive startup, sells less than 50,000 vehicles a year, has spent considerable amounts of money on products in a battery plant, and lose money every year. But they're still around for now. Finally, oligopolies have achieved their size through organic growth and reinvestment. Many have been done through mergers and acquisitions as well. If you are looking for a recent example, just look at the airline industry over the past 20 years. Mergers have played a significant role in the current size of the top 4 firms in the market. Let's go back for a moment to how we measure concentration. The 4-firm concentration ratio measures the percent of sales by the 4 largest firms in an industry. Typically, the 4 largest firms in an oligopolistic industry have a combined share of 40% or more. On the Herfindahl Index, the sum of the squared market shares for all firms shows an index of greater than 1,500. And so you can see the difference here in terms of the levels of concentration in this oligopolistic market as compared to monopolistic competition. These percentages are much, much higher. Based on U.S. Census data, the firms on this chart all have 4-firm concentration ratios that are higher than 40%, and the Herfindahl index is greater than 1,500. The beer, petrochemical, tires, and motor vehicle industries are highlighted examples of oligopolies. The shortcomings of these concentration measures are worth repeating. Remember, these are measures of sector concentration. Stated another way, they measure the level of competition that exists in a specific industry. The Bureau of Census data reflects national scores for the United States. Local oligopolies can exist even though the national concentration ratios are low. In some instances, there is inter-industry competition. Concentration ratios are based on somewhat arbitrary definitions of industries. Yet consumers have alternatives outside of the specific industry. For example, tableware can be made of plastic instead of glass. Builders and electronics technicians can use either copper, aluminum, or fiber optics in their applications. So the level of how you group particular sectors, you have to be very, very careful to determine those particular concentration ratios. Recall, the presence of substitutes increase competition and make prices more elastic and therefore less controllable. These concentration measures have historically been measured among domestic producers. Yet, import competition has decreased the market power of local firms in the U.S. The Detroit Three, GM, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler compete against imported German luxury brands and Asian entries. Some of these actually assemble vehicles in the United States. Previous table shows that 4 U.S. firms produce 73% of the domestic output of tires. It ignores the fact that a very large proportion of truck and auto tires brought into the United States are imports. There are also other considerations. Consolidation is taking place on a global scale, causing distortions in a U.S.-only measurement. SAB Miller is a brewing and beverage multinational company based in London. Their portfolio includes over 150 brands. Anheuser-Busch InBev has over 200 beer brands. These beer giants are consolidations of previously independent companies. Yet, they still have to compete in the U.S. market with many regional craft brewers who have a very loyal following. The true level of competition can sometimes be hidden in the numbers. As with monopolistic industries, oligopolies are inefficient. They price above their minimum average total cost, and their price is above marginal cost. From an economist's perspective, these are production and allocation distortions. Yet, the ability to hold price up and make an economic profit has limitations, even with oligopolies. As mentioned previously, imported brands, who are also starting to make their products in the United States, provide significant alternatives for consumers. Consumers benefit if oligopolies keep prices below what they could naturally get in order to deter new firms from entering the market. However, to me, this benefit is a stretch, and they are very rare examples where oligopolies actually do that. They're mostly interested in determining how much price they can get based upon what potential competitive reactions would be, as opposed to keeping prices low for the benefit of consumers. Yet, on the positive side, oligopolists have large economic profits from which they can fund expensive research and development and product development. This can provide better products, more alternatives, and lower costs over time. So this is one of the key benefits that are cited and one of the key differentiators here of oligopoly. They are inefficient. They're inefficient by those economist measures that we have learned. However, because of the money that they make, and if you just think of firms like Apple and others, they foster R&D and product development, and what we as consumers get is really more choice, more alternatives, more brands, and so we can pick and choose exactly what we want, and are less concerned, quite frankly, than economists that oligopolies are inefficient. This is our classic chart that we take a look at. It has the factors of average total cost that you can see with the red line, the downward sloping demand curve in green, and the fact that in oligopolies, the marginal cost and the marginal revenue are below average total cost. But the other thing that is important on the chart is that, as we can see on this graph, oligopolies can set the price that they charge substantially above minimum average total cost at PO. They have differentiated brands, they have unique characteristics and unique products, so that they can get that differentiated pricing, which is above their average total cost. They also set their production at QO, or at a point that does not generate the lowest average total cost. So when you take a look at this thing and see, well, are they operating at the lowest point on their average total cost curve? No. They are getting more price, and that price that they get for that differentiated brand and where they operate in terms of PO and QO is what provides the profit to provide all of these product alternatives. Oligopolies pay very close attention to their rivals. When making decisions, they consider what rivals' reactions may be. They exhibit strategic behavior. This is quite a luxury as compared to the brutal aspects that we've learned of a purely competitive marketplace. Top firms in an industry have a strong mutual interdependence. Their combined profit depends on the price and sales strategies of the total group. Why is this being highlighted? Well, because of the mutual interdependence, there is the potential for company collusion by attempting to fix prices or wage agreements or product availability. Should note that price fixing is illegal, but not always visible. At times, there is also a strong incentive to cheat. That is, move in the opposite direction of an agreement, so the cheating firm gets an increased production or price benefit. Typically, this benefit is short-lived. If you want to explore this in more detail in terms of the strategic decisions in how they view those competitive reactions, you can review applications of game theory in the book. Let's look at two ways that oligopolies behave as a group. Both of the methods limit competition and hurt the consumer. The first is the price leadership model of behavior. Price leadership entails a type of implicit understanding by which oligopolists can coordinate prices without engaging in outright collusion based upon formal agreements and secret meetings. How does it work? Well, the dominant firm initiates price changes and the other firms follow the leader. Many industries, including farm machinery, cement, copper, glass, and beer, are practicing or have in the recent past practiced price leadership. In the 70s and 80s, General Motors was perceived to be the price leader in the automobile business. Those days are gone. The level of competition from imports has changed that paradigm. How does the price leader communicate? By calling the competitor? No, they don't do that. Price changes initiated by the leader are typically infrequent and announced after there are major changes in wages, visible resource costs, or major product changes. Annual changes in products. Thus, the resource cost increase acts as a communication trigger to all firms. Likewise, the price leader has ample opportunity to make public announcements about the state of profits in the industry, give speeches at industry gatherings about headwinds in the market, and explain to shareholders why their profits are not what they should be. Everybody in the industry gets the message. Sometimes the price leader has a different motivation. Keep other firms from entering the market. Thus, they will limit pricing to keep returns low if they think there is a significant opportunity of disruptors entering the market. This strategy sometimes leads to price wars, as not everybody is willing to go along with price-limiting strategies. However, most price wars eventually run their course. After a period of low or negative profits, they again increase prices and other firms follow. So this is one way that oligopolies can maintain this type of strategic behavior. There is no collusion here. It is not illegal. It's closely watched because these types of PR announcements and shareholder meeting announcements and speeches at conferences do send signals to other players in the market about what is going on. So they're watched by all of the firms that exist in the marketplace. And they're watched by governments as well. Sometimes the coordination is more explicit, like with cartels. A cartel is a group of producers that create a formal written agreement specifying how much each member will produce and charge. For the cartel to work, output must be controlled and allocated to the various members. Cartels and collusion has occurred in the United States, and the examples are famous cases that have served as the foundation of current antitrust laws. Today, those laws are used to prosecute offenders doing business in the United States and around the globe. Thus, explicit collusion is illegal. The most significant international cartel is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC. In the past, OPEC has been able to drastically influence the price of oil by restricting supply. During the mid-1970s, they restricted output and increased prices, drastically hurting the U.S. automobile market and other industries. OPEC is a strong cartel, but less of an influence today and moving forward. The United States, Canada, and Brazil and Russia have all increased their ability to produce more crude oil. From an economist's perspective, higher prices charged by the cartel led to supply increases from non-cartel producers. It enabled disruptors to come into the market and increase supply. Price did act as an incentive for more supply. Second, alternative energy sources like natural gas, solar, and wind are growing in popularity. Competition has decreased the market power of this cartel. So whether covert or explicit, the obstacles to collusion will always be present, or just around the corner. Oligopolies have different cost structures and different motivations. These differences lead to confusion when trying to coordinate strategies. Likewise, market power and dominance, it just doesn't last forever. Just look at what happened to General Motors and IBM. They are still very important companies, but do not have the market dominance enjoyed in the past. Finally, antitrust laws are on the books to prohibit illegal activity, and most of those today center around price fixing or restraint of trade. There are new oligopolies in the market, many of which did not exist 2 decades ago. Markets are always changing. The internet became accessible to the average person in the mid-1990s. Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple have all developed into significant companies providing a number of different products and services. These new tech companies are not satisfied with revenues generated in their traditional businesses. They are branching out. Amazon is not just a bookseller anymore. Microsoft and Apple make their own smartphones. Google and Facebook generate significant advertising revenue. These firms innovate. They do their research. They are basically what you want oligopolists to do: provide more consumer choice. They must innovate. Competition is just around the corner. Alibaba, the huge Chinese product supplier, is a powerful Amazon competitor, and Samsung continues to innovate to keep pace with Apple. Competition is not sleeping, and governments are always watching for uncompetitive behavior. Europe's antitrust authorities have recently continued to warn Google that they appear to be restricting competition in the market. So it's not just the United States that looks at antitrust or collusion behavior or at oligopolies. The European group also does the same thing because the market is so large there. So to conclude, you should know that by now that as we measure it as economists, oligopolies are inefficient. But that inefficiency and the price premium that they get in the market, i.e. profit, the trade-off then is the increased choices, increased product availability, increased brands that we get as consumers.